Hello, everybody. Welcome back for Coach's Corner. Today, we're joined by Coach Ryne Romick from Denison Baseball. Coach Rome is the associate head coach at Denison, now in his 9th season with the Big Red across 2 different stints. This is Rome's, as I said, Rome's 2nd stint at Denison, between which he coached at the D1 level for 4 or 5 years at University of Dayton in the A10 conference, and then at Ohio University in the MAC. Since his return to Denison, which brings us will bring us to the topic at hand today. The program has spent a lot of time in the top 25 rankings for a lot of good reason. So in 2019, Denison went 39-9, notched a 17-game winning streak, and won the NCAC tournament championship, advancing to a D3 regional. In 2021, Denison made its 3rd straight trip to the NCAA tournament, going 27-13 and winning another NCAC championship. 2022 record of 35-11, captured a 3rd straight NCAC championship and a 4th consecutive NCAA regional. This time, they were the host for the first time in program history. 2023, the Big Red continued their run, went 36-10, won a 4th straight NCAC championship, going undefeated, 16-0 in conference play for as far as I know, I think the first time ever in conference history. Went to a 5th consecutive NCAA regional. And last year, in 2024, Denison finished with a school record 42 wins, going 42-8, good for the 2nd best winning percentage in D3 baseball, en route to a 5th straight NCAC championship and a 6th consecutive NCAA tournament bid, going on to win their NCAA regional and advance to the super regional. So far this year, they're currently ranked number 5 in the country by D3Baseball.com, which brings us to the topic of today, which is recruiting and building a winning culture, which clearly those are some bullet points that certainly point in that direction. So, Coach Rome, thank you so much for joining us today.
Yeah, thanks for coming. Thanks for having me. Thanks for coming. Yeah, thanks for joining me.
Absolutely.
The crazier part of that is that I think 2018 was the very first regional that Denison ever made in its history, and then 19 was the first conference championship ever. So it's just a build, it's not like there was a lapse or anything. It's been like a steady little build. So it's fun.
As you're saying before we started recording, it's a generational run for the Big Red. Which is awesome to see. And I know that, the area of focus for this conversation is that idea of building the culture, because I know that it's something that you and Coach Deegan there take pretty seriously. I mean, I think that a lot of the things that we'll talk about come apart in this book to some degree as well. Coach Deegan has a whole book that touches a lot on, building culture and continuous improvement and, his own relationship with failure and all those things. And I think that all of those obviously have worked there in Granville. And I think that's, fairly unsurprising with what you guys have put together. So just awesome to see a really kind of peak of the D3 ladder, both baseball wise, but also culturally and also academically. I mean, I think that can't be ignored. You're doing this at a school that, has some pretty strict admission standards too, that you're working with.
Yeah. Yeah. That keeps getting better. The school's in such a strong spot. I think for top 40 liberal arts, I'd have to do a bit more research. I did it a couple of years ago. I think we're the only team that's been in the top 25 in the last 6 years, consistently in the top 25, not in and out. That's in a top 40 liberal arts school. So that duality is something that we hunt for. That's our shared purpose, is to try to win a national championship and have an elite student athlete experience. And that duality, I think, is something that we do a decent job of. But we're trying to be elite at it, right? Like that's our goal.
Yeah, I love that. Which does lead us in. So I have some questions just based on the success. So, and I kind of broke these down in terms of recruiting culture and then building culture, because obviously those two are very much related, but just kind of thinking about them as separate phases of the student athlete experience. So from a recruiting culture standpoint, what are the qualities that you look for in a recruit beyond their on-field performance, where you say that's a Denison guy?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I think there's probably a lot of layers to that, but I think the easy one, I'd say that to hit the softball and not dive in too hard, would be just, you're looking for someone that really enjoys playing the game of baseball. And you can see that, like, when you watch people play, when you watch people work out, that they just enjoy being at the yard. It doesn't look like work to them. It doesn't look like someone drugged them there. It doesn't look like they're looking forward to getting out of there. They just enjoy what they're doing. It's fun. And the toughness is fun. The struggle is fun. and they just enjoy what they're doing. So that is something that I think people wear outwardly, and we're constantly looking for those guys because, as you know, Denison is hard and baseball is really hard, especially when you play a tough schedule and your standards are high and your expectations are high. There's a struggle that comes along with that. So those being prepared for those hardships, if you play with joy and you enjoy what you're doing, it's much easier to kind of deal with all that stuff.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, you got to have to keep working as hard as you're going to in a program like Denison to continue to improve and get better. You have to love
sometimes when you're not playing.
Certainly.
Right? Like you're gonna have to work while you're not playing.
Yeah.
And you can only play 9 guys. We got a roster of 40. You can only throw 1 guy at a time on the mound. We're gonna have 16, 17, 18 pitchers. So it's like, if you don't really enjoy this, as soon as the lineup card goes up, do you go like, I'm done? I'm not playing. It's like, no, that's not what it's about.
Yeah. And so when it comes to looking for that, because that's all, I mean, that's a really key piece, especially in a highly competitive program, right? Like not everybody plays, and the better the program is, the smaller the eye of the needle is to play at that program. And as one of the best programs in D3, like eye of the needle couldn't get much smaller for playing at Denison. So how do you assess that? Like when you see a kid and you think, okay, he's having fun playing the game, what are the interactions or what are the ways that prospective players can demonstrate, like, I'm going to come and work my tail off no matter what my role is on the team? Or, how do you assess and see those intangibles to see if they're a good character and cultural fit?
Yeah, I think oftentimes when you go watch a kid play, you want to see him like hit 3 doubles and steal 4 bases. But it's honestly okay. Like when I enjoy a guy, somebody makes an error behind them if they're pitching, right? And it's like, okay, cool. Like, he's pitching really well, but now this guy kicked the ball short, and now this third baseman kicks the ball. Now it's first and second, and you're not pitching that bad. But how are you dealing with that situation? Like, how are you carrying yourself outwardly towards your teammates? Same thing hitting wise. Obviously, you want to see guys, hit the ball well, but then okay, well, it was a bad call by the umpire. Whatever happens, if you go to your guys' event, there's going to be an umpire behind the mound. I always tell guys, like, how are you going to like get ticked off? Like,
right, strike zone subjective. Yeah,
that's right. He calls a pitch 2 balls off the plate. Like, how are you going to get ticked off? You just smile, go back to the dugout, maybe tip your cap to him, show him that you have a little personality. It's okay. Like, so those types of things, I think, just dealing with a little adversity in the games, I think are fun to see. And sometimes you have to see guys play maybe a couple times to see them face that adversity. And then seeing their interactions with teammates, I think, is always important. Like how they dealing with a teammate maybe that's struggling, how they dealing with a teammate that maybe does better than them. That's always important. Like, are you supportive of the guy who just hit a nuke when you hit like a infield single? Or are you ticked off that you didn't get the shine that he got or whatever? So those things are always important. I think it's the little interpersonal relationships that you're trying to watch that you can kind of see. Either is this person equipped to kind of walk into our culture, or is it someone that you're going to have to work with to make them fit in the culture? And both of those are okay. Like, not everybody's going to walk in the door and be like Mr. A personality, like perfect, comfortable in their own skin, can talk to a boardroom. They're definitely not all those. Most of them are the opposite of that. So if we can find guys that have some of those traits, and then we think, hey, through personal conversations with them, their parents, what's their upbringing look like? What do their coaches say about them? Do we think, hey, as they get comfortable, and we kind of mold them towards someone that's really going to fit in the culture?
That makes a lot of sense to me. And I think that there's 2 things in there that I want to kind of zoom in on. One is that idea of, to some degree, recruiting failure, right? Like if you see a kid at a showcase who goes 4 for 4 with 4 bombs, that's great. He's a great player.
Right.
But such an important piece of assessing a high school student athlete can be, how do they respond when things don't go their way, right? When he does strike out, or when he does make an error, when somebody makes an error behind him, like, how do they respond to that is such an important piece. And I think that it's important to kind of double down on that for high school players, because, everybody talks all the time, right? It's a cliche. Baseball is a game of failure. You fail 7 out of 10 times, you're in the Hall of Fame. But on the day-to-day, it's really hard to give that the front of your mind, right? It's hard for high school players to realize that in that moment when they strike out, and they, it's just platitudes until it's reality for them.
That's right. And like you said, I think in high school too, let's say you're a really good high school player, you're definitely probably hitting over 400. Like unless you're like at an elite top end, like whatever D6 or Division 6 or 5A or whatever, depending on what state you're in. Unless you're one of these top ones, you're at a smaller school, you're hitting 450 or whatever, and it's like you're not gonna hit 450 here. Like it's not gonna happen. There's a few guys in the country that hit 450. So when you're hitting 304 and we're asking you to sack bunt and things like that, like it's going to weigh on you. Like it's going to be tough. So yeah, you're constantly trying to see like, how's this guy deal with it when the world doesn't kind of like move towards him a little bit and say he gets a bad hop or whatever. How's he kind of flow and how's he talk to other people and does he handle it in stride? And some of those guys, when those things happen and you see that and you're like, okay, like he's going to be just fine. Like that, like taking a bad round to BP didn't faze him at all. And if like some of the best hitters, they can take a terrible round of BP and you go like, how does that happen? And our best player, he'll come out and you're like, you all right? And he's like, I'm good. Like it didn't even faze him. Like it doesn't matter because he knows it's just part of the process. He's just working through it. Like he'll figure it out. And
it's like, well, that wasn't ideal, but I'll get the next one.
That's right. Like it's all good. And you have the other guys that'll come out and they carry that round of BP with them through every other drill of practice. And it's like, hey, you're not gonna make it very long doing this.
So I get one thing that I always have said is like, if you're on a college baseball roster, chances are very good that you were the best player at your high school, right? Like by and large, like, there might be some kid who's like, yeah, he's playing at Denison and he had a teammate who happened to go play at Vandy or something like that. Like that does happen. But by and large, all kids on college rosters are going to more than likely be the best. They're used to being the best player around. Now they're stepping into an atmosphere where they probably aren't, certainly as first years and maybe not ever in that program. So I think that emphasis on how does every player respond to that failure? How does that player who's used to hitting 450, how do they respond when they're hitting 290 and struggling to find holes in the infield as opposed to hitting gappers, like, or pitchers who are used to blowing kids away with their fastball and now they're throwing great, like they're throwing 87. That's what kids are used to facing at the next level or whatever the case is. So I think that's such an important piece. And one thing that we can dive into now, actually, I'd love to, is you look for the potential of these intangible qualities in players, but that as a 16, 17-year-old, they're not going to be perfectly polished in all these areas, right? They're high school sophomores, juniors, seniors, like they're not ready to be a Rhodes Scholar.
Right.
Almost certainly. Right. So how do you, as a program, what does that look like to encourage, to foster, to build those characteristics as a piece of the team culture? Because it's obviously not just like, oh, we talked to this one kid and he had a great impact, because 7 years in a row of successful program that outlasts any individual player in the program. So it's clearly some kind of, to some degree, top down and bottom up cultural impact that you guys are having. How do you work on those things in the program?
Yeah, I think some of them are cliche, right? Like our older guys model behavior really well, right? And it's a lead from the top down type of thing, where meaning like carrying stuff on the bus, like the first 2 weekends, and that's what I've had a couple people ask, because it's like Colasso's D3 Player of the Year. He's carrying fungos. Sudger's a good player. He's carrying fungos. We got guys carrying machines, and our seniors are doing it, and juniors are doing it. And our freshmen don't have any responsibilities when we go on the roads. Like they don't carry buckets, they don't carry. And so we always say, like, we always joke around, like, you have to earn the right to carry stuff. Because that, now you have responsibility. Now you have ownership over the program. This is my stuff. Like I'm carrying it. I got it. And so some of it, it's just like you see younger guys walk around and some of them, it takes them 20 games to realize that they're not carrying anything. Like they have no responsibilities. So it's really funny, but you'll see some guys right away, like realizing, like, holy cow, he just played a doubleheader and now he's carrying 2 buckets of balls. And then you start,
this kid who just went 4 for 8 with 3 bombs is like,
and now you start to see the younger guys go like, Eric, let me help you with and so you start to see it just like organically happen. It's not this forced thing that happens. So I think if you can make it happen kind of organically, it always like lasts a lot longer than if you're trying to force, responsibility on people and ownership and leadership on people. So I think that's one thing. Just our older guys really model behavior really well. And then from there, it's we do a book club, which I think helps with a lot of common language type stuff. So our first years read the same book every year. They read Training Camp by is it John Gordon? I can't remember. And then we do Atomic Habits, which is a Denison grad. We do what do we do? Chop Wood, Carry Water, and our seniors read Legacy about the All Blacks.
I was about to say the whole carrying the fungos thing. I was like,
Yeah.
that's like the Sweep the Sheds chapter from Legacy. That's
yeah. So sweep the sheds. Yeah. So our guys will say that, but you'll hear the same phrases come out of the team, regardless of years. You start hearing the same language come out, and it gets sprinkled every year over winter break. They read the same books. And so over a course of time, then over 4 years or whatever, you've read the same 4 books that, Will Krishna read and Brian McAuliffe read that graduated 5 years ago. They read the same books. So if Brian read the books, I'm not sure if he did or not, but those are that's something else it's small, and I think it can be overlooked, but I do think the common language always helps, that thread that connects everybody. But yeah, I think, again, it's just a constant barrage of the same messages over and over and over. Like, this is our culture. This is what we're known for. This is how we get down. This is the way we communicate. We don't have a rule book. We don't have rules in our program. Or be a good dude. That's all you have to be. If you're a good dude, then you'll be fine. And that means making good decisions. That means taking care of each other. That means talking to people respectfully. All those things. But our guys say, just be a good dude. Like, you'll be fine. But that's really it. I don't think there's a secret, like, there's no handbook that we hand out and whatever, but I think it really is led by our players, and that's kind of been passed down for, probably the past 10 years or whatever with these here.
I love that. I mean, the idea of kind of creating this common language across the books you're reading, the way that you talk, like that really makes a lot of sense to me in terms of having that legacy or having that cultural that live on as well, right? Like, okay, right. Great. The seniors are talking about it this year in a way that next year, the juniors, next year's seniors are going to be talking about it in some of the same ways. And kind of, I also, one thing that you touched on that I would kind of pull on is connecting it to the legacy of kids that have been through the program before them as well, right? It's not just like, all right, there's this kid's on this team. There is a connection to the 2019, the 2018, the 2017 Denison rosters that have come through and done some of the same stuff. Like, and do you guys pull on that explicitly and be like, hey, like this 2017, or is it more kind of just organic in the way that happens?
So usually at the beginning of each year, Coach Deagle will do a little history recap of, like, this is what's happened in the program. Even in going back to, like, this team went 29 and he goes year by year, and this team went 29 and this team struggled and they went 20 and 22 or whatever it was. And then, like, he has a team, he always says, like, embodied one of his favorite teams just in the way they were selfless and cared about each other. And they went like 27 and 13 or something, 2017, I think. And it's always just a good, like, the guys start to, like, learn the history of at least the last 10 years of the program, and kind of understand, who guys are or whatever. They start to at least get a little familiarity with it. But then, so then they kind of learn the curve of, like, how they got to where they are. And you hope to just say that so that, you don't have guys walking in the program going, we're number 5 in the country. And it's like,
right,
bro, this is taking a lot of work and a lot of blood and a lot of sweat, and guys playing hurt and guys coming back from injury too quick. And it's taken a lot from a lot of people to put us in the spot we are now. And those preseason rankings literally mean nothing. It's basically what you did the year before, right? So and everybody knows that. So it means nothing. And you hope to kind of give them the whole, like, it's your job to start pulling the rope now. It's not, you don't just get to stand there and reap the benefits of whatever has happened. So so that history lesson, I think it's important. I think it's part of probably, like, you're trying to find guys that have a knowledge of the history of the game a little bit, baseball in general, but you hope that your players have a history of your own program, because I think it's important. You start to understand when guys float back in the door and they come back to watch practice, you're like, oh, that's so-and-so. Yeah, I know who that is. Like, well, he came back on one day's rest and pitched in a regional. That's Charlie Fleming or Taylor Parrott or whoever, right? So you start to see these guys and you start to know those names. And I think it's a lot better connection to the program and more, you find more value in what the jersey you're wearing, the stuff that you're carrying, things like that.
Yeah, it's a connection to something bigger than just this team or just
Yeah.
themselves. Like that feels like a really important piece of building a successful and building the longevity of the culture is not just like, hey, this year we have a really good culture and therefore we end up having a really good team. It's no,
Right.
year over year. This is cumulative. Like this builds on what we've been doing for a decade plus in this program, and that's why it works.
Right.
And it's bigger than you. It's bigger than any of
Yeah.
these individual players.
That's
I
right.
love that. How do you balance, or is there a balance for how you recruit on-field talent with the key pieces of character or culture that you're looking for? And then also with a school like Denison, as you talked about, top liberal arts school, there's the added layer of academics on the recruiting side. So when and how do those pieces kind of come together? Are they viewed separately? Is it just one holistic way that you think about a player who's interested in your program?
That's it's tough. That's a deep question. I would say academically, that's probably the easy part because for me, I always just go like, if you can't get in, I'm not recruiting you, so it doesn't really matter. Like we need someone that's really, really good academically, and you got to hit those bare minimums, or I'm just not going to even start this process and talking to you. So that's kind of out. And then when you weigh up to like the character piece and the talent piece, there's probably a special yin and a yang to that. Obviously, I think there's a level of talent, right? However you want to say that word, talent, stuff, athletic ability, whatever, hit tool, whatever those are. But there's a level that you have to get to, like regardless. And it wouldn't matter if you're below that line. I don't care if you're like God's gift to character, right? Like we can't do anything with it. Like I love you, that's great, but you're not going to help us win, even though you're a really good person. So once you're above that line, then I'd say, then it's like, how far above the line do you get where I'm willing to take a cut on character? And then, like I said in the beginning, how much of it do we think is terminal, and how much of it do we think is mendable and moldable and fixable? Because let's not get it twisted. We're all faulted and failed and everything else. So we've all made mistakes, and especially young kids. Even when we get them, they're going to make mistakes when they get here. Like, so we're just, it's all going to be like, where do we think we can go? And again, like what problems are we willing to put up with, depending on what type of player are we getting,
Right.
talent.
Like what species of problem, but then also like how much of a project is this kid going to potentially be either on the field or character wise? And again, with 16, 17-year-olds and in all likely cases, both, like they're going to have stuff to work on character wise and on the field. But that's also where it seems like there's an ability in the program to not for you or Coach Deegan to be like, all right, this kid's coming in, he's really good, but he's lacking in X, Y, or Z character traits. That's a personal project that you or Coach Deegan are taking on. And it's more like, we're going to surround him with the team culture, and that is going to take care of a solid chunk of what we need this kid to be. And then there's also going to be individuals that pull weight in that project as well. But it seems like the team culture could also do some of that work, the way that you guys have constructed that.
Yeah, there's no doubt. And that, we always say, like, I think we're equipped to handle some issues. Like, we'll be okay. Like, we're equipped to handle that. We'll be okay. We don't need, a bunch of choir boys running around. We'll be okay. But I still think the person has to want to, he has to want to be involved. It's got to be, a voluntary choice to get in this and want to be in it. Because we'll even have, players, I would say, that don't have cultural problems, or character issues, but this is not really what they want. It may be what they put a front on and say that they want. They want to be in this big time, apparatus that's bigger than myself, and, try to win a championship. And then when they get here, it's like, that's not really what you wanted. Like you thought
I wanted to be the guy or whatever.
That's right. So I think you have to really want to dive in. And if you dive, we've had players that, I would say were hours from having to make really tough decisions of like, is this really what I want to do? I'm going to have to change my life in order to stay in this. And they did. And they were, some of them were really good players. Some of them were just okay players, and some of them didn't really play, but they became better humans.
Yeah.
And I think at the end of the day, if you make the choice to just kind of dive in and be a part of it and kind of at least extract what value you can out of it, you're going to have to give something in return. So I think some guys just struggle with that part of it. So if they're willing to dive in and do it, I think they can, make some lifestyle adjustments, some character adjustments.
And so you've coached at the D1 and the D3 level.
Mm-hmm.
How is that, and recruited heavily at both? You've attended Head First events for Dayton and for Denison for years now. How are those recruiting processes different between the D? I guess in my mind, I first laid this out as like between D1 and D3 as you think about things like character fit, but also with the rigor of a culture like Denison, that adds another layer too. So like, how are those kind of processes different in how you see players, how you evaluate players, the timing of that process for high schoolers as they get recruited?
Yeah. The easy one's the timetable. Usually it's quite a bit earlier for the Division I level. It used to be a lot more earlier. Now it's slowed down a little bit. But even some Division III nows are starting to move a lot earlier, which I think is crazy. But that's another topic. I would say the main difference is obviously money, right? You have at the Division I level now, we're introducing athletic scholarships and not just academic scholarships. So when that comes into play, the best way I can always tell people I equate like the Division III recruiting kind of process is that it is legitimately like a snapshot. And I'm willing to admit it's a snapshot if you're willing to have the conversation that it's a snapshot, right? Like, did I see the best 2 days of you in your life, or did I see the worst 2 days in your life? And both can be true. I have no idea. I just see what I see. That's why I think like data and tech are important, because those kind of typically don't have, like, you don't run a 7 flat and then run a 6-4 like in one day. So where you can hit like 3 doubles in a day and kind of look together at the plate, and then you hit a $120 at your high school or something like that can happen. So and vice versa. You can go for 3 with 3 strikeouts and be a really good hitter at high school. That can happen as well. So I think the Division III is much more of a snapshot. It's really quick because of recruiting budgets, how much time coaches get on the road. Especially for us being more of a national landscape recruiting. If we're recruiting guys from South Carolina and DC and New York and, Philly, I'm not going to see them for like 3 straight weeks unless they end up hitting like a similar circuit that we are on, which is, it can happen, but it's rare. At most, sometimes I'll see guys like twice in a summer. Whether I see him at a camp and then I see him at Head First, or I see him at a tournament and then I see him at your place, or I see him at a camp and then I see him in a tournament. Like, it's probably, that's the most, if we can get lucky. So a lot of it is there's more video and things like that. And Division I level, if I'm going to invest 25, 30, 40% on a guy, then we got to see more than like one outing and go like, man, he's really good, we got to go. It's like, if I'm giving you, half a scholarship, we got to make sure a lot more, where there's not as much tie to that. And that also affects the relationships, where at the Division I level, if you give a guy 80% scholarship, you're going to give him more opportunities than you give the walk-on, and that's just face facts. That's what's going to happen. So, and so at the Division III level, you don't have that. So you don't have the money tied to the name, and this is not our full ride guy, and this is not our walk-on guy. It's just a guy on our roster. That's the main differences, really. I think timetable, the money, and then I think just the depth at which you look at players is a lot different.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, right? Like the money tied into it, especially. So, and you've touched on this a little bit, but if you could kind of distill. So now, like, the idea of building culture, right? Like, great, you've gotten kids who are faulted in some ways, but they're areas that you're able and willing to work with, and they're highly talented players. They pass the academic threshold. What are the core values that you emphasize? There isn't a credo. It sounds like there isn't a written handbook that says, teamwork, integrity, respect, or whatever it is. There aren't, that isn't written anywhere. But if you had to put into like a mission statement, what are the values that you emphasize with teams year over year?
Yeah. So we have our shared purpose is to compete for national championship and have an elite student athlete experience. And so we have 4 pillars. We have grit, the ability to overcome obstacles, persevere. Gratitude is the soft skill off of that. Readiness to show appreciation, see things through a lens of gratitude, I think is important. Especially we do have a really good endowment. We do have nice things, and we do get to travel around on charter buses. So not looking at it from a lens of entitlement and looking at it through appreciation, I think is important. Then our last two are Kaizen, which is a Japanese business phrase, continuous never-ending improvement. So you'll constantly hear us, we go 3-0 first weekend, beat 3, top 25 teams, and we come back and we have a bunch of stuff to get better at. And so the guys constantly just get that message, like, this is not going to stop. Like, we're not, Coach Deegan's not going to go, man, we're done it. We've done it. Like, we're 3-0. That was it. Cool. It's on the way home. What do we need to get better at? What do we got to fix? What do we got to do? What do we got to put in next week? And then you just start going. And I think the messaging early on is to always tell recruits, like, this is what it's going to be like. You can go 3-0 or 0-3, and it's going to be the same thing. Like, we're going to try to get better. We're going to attack the gaps. We're going to emphasize our strengths, whatever it may be, but it's going to continue. The ball is going to roll forward, not going to stop. So if you're not prepared for that, I think sometimes guys can feel like they're getting just run over by the ball. And the last one is Mudita. I think that's become kind of really, really popular. It's vicarious joy for another's successes if it's your own. So for us, I think that's probably the one of the coolest things in action when you see it happen, and then come full circle back to that human that is showing that character trait. It's a really tough one to show. And when you see people do it and then they get to shine later, it is one of the coolest experiences ever.
That's so interesting, because I think, I love that it goes beyond a lot of the platitudes and goes into other cultures to take these things, right? Like Kaizen, continuous improvement. Like, as far as I know, that came from like Toyota lean manufacturing, that idea of continuous improvement, right?
Yep.
Right. And then, Mudita, I love that, because, people say, oh, we want team first guys, but like, what does that mean? How do you put some shared language to that? That's really cool.
It's basically that in action, right?
Yeah.
To think about it.
It's like you can talk about being a team first guy, but what does it look like to be that guy, to be excited for a teammate when you haven't seen the field in 4 games, or you're in a slump, or so, I mean, that's really cool. And so how much of that comes from, because the next question is kind of like, how do you develop leadership within the team? But you talked a little bit about the book club, like, how do you not enforce, but like, it's a lot of kind of player to player, peer to peer enforcement or fostering of this culture. Are there other ways, organic and kind of more structural, that you guys think about impacting, being like, all right, this team, this current iteration of the team is lacking in Mudita. Let's think about how to do that.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't know if there's really a direct, like, if there's ever really a direct force on some of those things. There's a lot of private conversations, I think is the best way to describe it. Like, we do 2 to 3 indie meetings a year with each guy. And, and coach has a lot more meetings, like individual meetings, than I do and Danny does, depending on personnel, like where they play. But I mean, as far as like having personal conversations about your life, about what you're trying to do, coach will do 2 or 3 of those with each guy throughout the year. And those, I think, go a long way to, like, one, you have direction and you have kind of course guidance from him as far as like, hey, this is not going the way it needs to go. Like, we need you to course correct and steer the boat left and get going that direction. And so he does a lot of that. And I think you'll see guys, kind of go that way. And then you always get that group that's like, sophomores going to be juniors maybe going to be seniors. And sometimes I think donning people like captains or whatever, I think it gets so forced where we've never had captains. Like, we've never had captains. And I would say it's been rare that we've had like a lack of leadership. And some of it's from a sophomore, some of it's from a junior, some of it's from some seniors. And sometimes it's not your best players. Sometimes your best players don't want to be bothered by having to like bark at people, So And some of them don't have that personality type either. So I think forcing people to like be a leader when you're not a talker and you're not a guy who can back up and see the space and know that, hey, our team looks like we're not prepared right now or whatever, I think is wrong. So it just kind of happens organically. I think he typically kind of steers people in the right direction. Like, hey, we're going to need you to start speaking up a little bit. Like, you're a guy with a voice. You're a guy that people listen to, they care for. You have a great work ethic. You embody, what we want a leader to look like. It's time for you to use your mouth a little bit and talk. And I think some of those, tend to work a little bit better than maybe putting a C on somebody's chest and saying, now you're the captain.
Right. I mean, leadership from wherever you are is it seems like a big piece of, if you're going to foster and encourage peer-to-peer leadership, then everybody needs to be empowered to be a leader and know what that means and tailor whatever that does mean to their own personality. And everybody's not a leader in the same way. It sounds like is also part of there are certain characteristics like, well, I'm a purely lead by example guy. And you're like, okay, but we also do need you to talk some.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Yeah. You purely leading over there in the corner by yourself is not
right. That's not doing much. Yeah. No. So is there a story of a player or a team that really stands out as like, regardless of on-field success, or maybe, I mean, given the success, I imagine they probably were pretty successful on the field too, but like a player team that embodies that culture. And if it's an individual, if it's a player, how evident were those traits or characteristics as you went through the recruiting process? Were them, or were they kind of like were they evident as you talked to the player, or did they more kind of were they brought out once they were on campus by the team and the culture?
Yeah. I have two good ones. They're two cool, excuse me, two cool stories. One is just happened, and he actually just got hurt again. So I feel terrible telling the story now. He got hurt again, but we had a freshman pitcher come in from Gonzaga in DC. Was a good high school pitcher, got hurt, I think late in the year, his senior year, tore his labrum in the tournament down there. So he came into school with arm in a sling, post-labrum surgery. Awesome kid, phenomenal family, phenomenal kid. Just wanted to help, like knew he was injured. Obviously he can't play, but like always asked, and was like very aware. Like it's weird for young guys to have like an awareness of there's a hole over there and I can go fill it. Like there's a chart not being kept, I can go do that. Or there's someone not feeding that machine, I can go do that. And then like bring it up before you notice it and be like, hey, you want me to go get that machine over there? And you're like, yeah, please, thank you. Like, you want me to go keep that chart over there that you forgot about? And it's like, yeah, please, thanks. I appreciate you saying so. So like he was constantly he was always looking for something to do. It was awesome. And the guys all know, a great kid. Everybody loved him. This fall, he finally got back, made his first like live appearance, gets a strikeout in like his first like live at bat, and whatever. And everybody goes nuts. We have it on Aware. It's a great video. Everybody's jacked up. Guys keeping the charter, fist pumping. Like, it was just really cool because he was a guy who served everybody else for a whole year, couldn't do anything, was hurt, and was a good high school player. And I think, coming here expecting to kind of help and probably impact early, and then it just didn't work out that way. But that was just kind of a selflessness towards everybody else, and that he was like full of mudita.
Yeah.
Always working hard, always trying to get back. And then you saw all come back to him like in a quick moment. So that was a cool story. The other one was, it's a great Kaizen story. We had a young infielder in 2019. Now he's at William & Mary, grad transfer to William & Mary. It was a shortstop. His first like timeout for BP, he was behind like a bunch of seniors, right? And we had kind of seniors around the infield. He was a freshman, so he wasn't going to play. And BP, our senior shortstop, is just out there just kind of going through the motions, and it's pregame BP. And he's not diving for balls and stuff. But he's really our only shortstop, so I'm okay with it. But Owen's behind him, and he's not diving either. And I go out there and I'm like, hey man, look, this is your game. You're not going to play. You're not going to get in the game. the BP for 40 minutes. Every time you get out here, you got to try to become, in 40 games, you got to try to become the best defender you can through BP, through practice. So for 6 days a week at practice and in-game BP, people are going to think you're nuts, but I want you laying out for everything. I want you finishing every play. I said, we're going to learn how to make every play on the planet. So he did, and he missed like a week in the middle of the year with strawberries on his hips. He got infected. He got strawberries on both hips from diving too much. So the trainer was like, "What's he doing? He's not playing." And I was like, "He's diving every day for every ball. Like he dives for everything." And so he got really good. And that we go to the conference tournament, and he never said a word. Never complained about not playing. He just worked really hard. Everybody saw it as a young kid. We get to the tournament. Our third baseman, the day before the tournament starts against Worcester, takes a pitch off the wrist in an inter-squad game, breaks his wrist. So Coach Deegan's like, "What do you think?" And I'm like, "Owen, like put him in.
That's the guy.
He's ready. He's plenty ready." And so put him at third base. First play of the game, Ben Gabur at the time smashes a shot in the 5-6 hole. He lays out, catches it, gets up, throws it on a knee, whacks him at first base, and everybody goes nuts. But like everybody like was so overprotective of him, of this young kid, because it was a bunch of seniors around the team, and they were like, they would do anything for him because he never said a word. He just worked really hard. He worked while he waited. And then he finally got a shot and he was ready. Like, and that's what people always say, like, "I just want an opportunity." And it's like, if you don't work, you're not going to be ready for it when you get it. So those are two like cool Mudita, probably in a Kaizen story, that just, if you do things right, you'll get rewarded, and it won't be on your time, but the game will give it back to you sometime.
I love both those. I mean, and both of them are really largely like off-field things, right? It's not like, oh, this kid came in and was, I mean, you guys have had NCAC players of the year. You guys have had D3baseball.com players of the year. Like, you've had All-Americans, and these are two kids who I'm sure are, very good at baseball, but that's not the area of emphasis. That's not what comes out in those stories. It's their embodiment of that team culture. And that's so cool. Like that, if those are people that you're elevating in the program, then, it's no wonder that the program continues to have success with these cultural elements, right?
Yeah.
For those kids in particular, was this something that you saw the potential for as you were talking with them when you were recruiting them? Or was it something where you're like, yeah, they're good kids, but what exactly that looks like might be different once they're on campus? And then it took this shape, it took its final form once they were within the culture of the team. Yeah.
I mean, I think for the pitcher in general, his brother also played college baseball. They kind of knew what it was about, played Division I baseball. Family, super easy to talk to, and kind of, when somebody gets it and they just seem like they got it. So I didn't think the experience was going to be challenging for him. I just thought, baseball may become challenging for you at some point, but like, I don't think the experience was going to be challenging. So that one didn't surprise me at all. The other one's a kid from North Carolina, a yes sir, yes ma'am, really straight-laced kid. Very respectful. It didn't really surprise me either. But like we've had kids that aren't those types of kids that end up kind of embodying those character traits too. It just kind of worked out of those two stories where those didn't surprise me, that they worked hard and they, were good people. As far as during the recruiting process, you can kind of tell.
I love that. One thing that's a little bit off topic, or a little bit, you touched on a little bit with the idea of data, but one thing that I know that a conversation that we've had on site between you and I is around use of data in recruiting. And I think particularly with pitchers. So could you just put a little bit of put some thought behind how data from platforms like Rapsodo, TrackMan, et cetera, how do they play into your assessments? What do you do with those? How do those help you evaluate and recruit players and, find the right guys as you assess kids?
Yeah. I mean, and look, I'm sure as heck not God's gift to data and understanding those technologies, but I've just been around them now for a little while. So you start learning more and more layers to it as you kind of get going. And I think at first it was always just like, it's like fascination with a radar gun. It's like, okay, we'll just put up the biggest number and then that guy's going to be good. And then you start to understand that's definitely not true. So just because you throw hard doesn't mean you can get outs and you're going to be a good pitcher. And then same goes for the data. Like I think you can, you can fall in love with it too much. And also you can not pay attention to kind of the glaring red flags sometimes because you'll like a guy. And then there's things on there that, there's a lot of different numbers on there. And there's things on there can, I guess forecast if this guy's going to be able to be consistent and throw a ton of strikes. There's things like that on there. And there's also stuff on there. It's like this guy's going to be able to get a ton of swings and misses, or at least weak contact with these certain types of pitches, or this guy's going to get hit really hard. And this pitch is going to play like right now in this head first game, but it's not going to play as soon as he walks on campus, and we're going to have to fix it. And some guys don't like hearing those things, but some of them are just factual. And that's kind of what the data does. It takes away the guessing game of like, man, this breaking ball's pretty good, or this two seam's got some nice life to it, or whatever. And now you don't have to guess. You can kind of go, yeah, it does. And that'll work. And we can work with that, and we can maybe tweak this or that, and it's going to play. So I think that's what data's done. It's kind of taken a little bit of the guessing game out of it. Same with hitting. It's like, okay, like, does this guy actually have power and pop, or is it just like we're playing on a high school field and he's facing 82 miles an hour and he hits a ball at 87 and it goes to the wall? It's like, okay, well, that's an out at our level, and maybe you won't even be able to catch up to it if the guy's throwing hard or something. So I think it takes a little bit of the guesswork out of it. That's kind of the easiest way to put it.
Right. Puts like some explanation, put some data behind, this is working.
Yeah.
Why?
Well, it's good forecasting, right?
Yeah.
Like I think that's the best way to describe it. You don't have to guess, is this fastball going to play against pretty good competition at the college level?
Right. It goes beyond just this is working now to, okay, what about this is working now? And are those same things going to translate to the next level?
Correct. Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah. So we broke it down. We broke it down probably a few weeks ago. I would say there's probably like 4 buckets for pitching. You got like athleticism bucket, the stuff bucket, which is where the data and the tech kind of falls in. And that's also where like guys get money. Like that's, if a guy throws 93 and he's got a nasty slider, he's going to get a scholarship. And so that bucket is kind of where all the concentration of like recruiting goes to right now, is in that one bucket. And the other 2, I think, are like mechanics and like pitchability, like being able to be a gamesman on the mound. And that bucket, I think, is so far overlooked. And there's no data for it. There's no scientific, but it's like the ability to have a presence, pitch, get outs, have feel for hitters. All those things I think are really overlooked because of that data bucket. But I think it is really important.
Absolutely. I mean, and I think that one thing I'd be curious for your take on as well is like, okay, the guy who clearly has stuff, the kid throwing 95 with a hammer, probably isn't looking at Denison. Like, it's a great D3 program, but if they're looking at D1 scholarship opportunities, like you have to spread your time across these other buckets differently, because you're to some degree looking for folks who are maybe not captured as cleanly in that stuff bucket. And you're looking more for pitchability and athleticism. Like, okay, right now your stuff isn't there, but your pitchability, your competitiveness, and you're athletic enough to put it together to keep getting better. Like, so is that fair to say? Is that like how you assess the different buckets you need to be highly cognizant of because of where you 100%. Are in the ladder? Okay.
100%. Yeah. I mean, our preseason All-American this year was 81. It was 79 to 81 or whatever in high school, but he's 6'3" and he was 165 pounds. So the athleticism bucket was like completely underdeveloped, like not even on his radar. The stuff wasn't very good, but he could pitch. He got outs in high school with underwhelming stuff, and mechanically it wasn't great, but I felt like it probably wasn't great because he wasn't a very good mover, because he wasn't very physically fit. And I thought maybe it would come together as he kind of figured out, and it kind of worked that way. Like, he got way more physically fit, and then the stuff kind of met. It's still not like, oh my gosh, this is unreal stuff, but it's good. It's above average stuff, especially at our level. Yeah. So it's like there's definitely those where I think when you can piece it together that way, you go like, if I sit here and I only wait for a guy to throw like 91 with great stuff, I'm going to be sitting there a long time, like a long time.
Right.
So you have to decide like what do I want? And if it's only like 6'4" and above guys who throw 87 miles an hour, again, like I'm carving myself out a really small niche. To try to find, people that can just pitch and get outs. And I think they're all across that board. You just have to kind of figure out how you want to take them.
Yeah, I love that. And I also love the idea of translating the data into knowledge of self to some degree as well. Like, all right, how can I use this to keep being more successful, to continue to develop my pitches, whatever it is? Like, what are the things I need to focus on and put some data behind that?
Yeah, you shouldn't all use it the same way, right? You're going to use the data. Like, again, you guys provide Rapsodo data for those guys. Like all the players at your event shouldn't be looking at it the same way. There should be guys that are just looking at it going like, am I being really consistent in how I move? Like, or because I was at the event and there was coaches watching, is my release height completely different and my extension completely different than it was like a week ago? And if that's the case, then we're moving different because the environment's different and there's people watching me with a radar gun. Like, that's a problem.
Now I'd love to move into the lightning round, which is four or so questions that are a little bit kind of quicker response, a little bit more like, all right, one sentence or one word, if that comes to mind. Sure. What is a question that recruits should be asking more in the recruiting process? One that they don't ask enough that you think every kid needs to know the answer to?
How much NIL money are you going to give me? No.
That's what they need to ask more of. Yeah.
No. Yeah, it's a good one. I think I would say what do opportunities look like at your school?
I like that.
And just try to listen for that answer. I think they're going to look a lot different everywhere you go, and see what they look like.
What is the pitch to a recruit that you're interested in to get them to choose Denison? Like, what makes Denison unique?
The sell is there is no sell.
Very, very zen. I like that.
We are a top 40 liberal arts school with a top 20 baseball team.
Done.
That sounds good. Come on.
Yeah. What is an off-field action, habit, or interaction that stands out to you and gets a kid's name highlighted in your recruiting?
How they treat their mother.
I like that one. That one does come up. Yeah. That's a, mom's not carrying the bags. You're carrying your bag. You're not getting frustrated with her about whatever, the parking spot.
Yeah. And don't be afraid to show affection to your mother.
I like that. What is the number one, like the first thing you look at in a potential recruit? You see them for the first time at a tournament or at a showcase or at your prospect camp, whatever it is. What's the first thing that you look at or notice about a kid that makes their way onto your list?
How they wear their uniform and how they interact with adults.
I love it. Coach Romick, that brings us to the end. I really appreciate the time. Thank you so much for sharing, and looking forward to continue to follow the 2025 campaign and some more culture. I think that this is such a fascinating topic and an area of conversation. And I really appreciate the work and the thought that you and Coach Deegan are putting in on this front. I think it's rare and it's super, super valuable.
Thanks, man. I always enjoy you. You know that. Can't wait to see you again in the summertime and have some more conversations. And thanks for what you're doing. I appreciate this, and this is really cool. So good luck with all of your endeavors down there at Head First Land.
Thank you. I appreciate that, Ron.
All right.